Hello, it's me, Thea Touchton. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been to my channel, we do things a little differently around here, okay? So most film reviews that you will see usually have clips of the film. I am an actual producer. I make films. I've been a part of films as either an actor or a producer, and I don't know. I have no idea. I am not that connected into the YouTuber community just quite yet at the time of this video. I have no idea if they're licensing these clips. Are they just like pulling them from online? I don't know how these videos don't get frauded. I don't know what subject of law they go under, but normally whenever you have a clip from a video, you have to do a lot of licensing, and as that is my day job, I just wanted my YouTube channel to be fun, so I just take kind of vlogs from my life or AI art that I created and put it in to these sometimes 2 hours long, especially with like longer form television, because there's just so much to cover and often a lot of characters and perspectives, basically making mini movies over here on TV shows, but still they are less time than if you would watch the entire TV show, so I'm giving myself credit. I think I'm doing a good job. But anyway, yeah, for the most part, I only really color correct the vlogs. Sometimes I might do like a kaleidoscope edit on it if I think it's more interesting visually. And the AI art is all based on photographs that I took or were either taken of me, and then I use an app. Usually the app is listed below. If you are curious ever about where I took a video or how I did a photo, feel free to ask. I'm more than willing to share my process. But yeah, that's just kind of how these film vlogs work. Eventually, one day, I will be organized enough to make a channel video about it. But without further ado, this video is about, as I'm sure you can tell from the title, Mr. Robot Season 2, because I left you on that Season 1 cliffhanger. So this takes place 30 days after the 5-9 hack. At first I thought it was like the 9-5 hack, because I want to be like, how do you hack your 9 to 5? But no, it's the 5-9 hack, which is carried out by F Society and the Chinese Dark Army hackers. It took place on May 9th, 2015, on the anniversary of Edwin, close but no cigar, Edward, oh my god, I'll get it one day, you guys, Edward Alderson's birth. There we go. And that's why it has the name. I don't know a lot about Edward Alderson, actually. Oh, it's Mr. Robot. Okay, there we go. We know. Now we know. And I thought it was him, because I was like, isn't it Elliot Alderson? But I'm so used to calling him Mr. Robot that I forgot his name was Edward. So, like, I think I'm always perpetually forgetting any Edward names. Besides, there was one cat that we had without any tail whose name was Ed. And then we also, I always think of Chronicles of Narnia. Why do I want to say Guardians of Narnia? I'm just like all mixed up, so have fun. But anyway, the hack was designed to destabilize the financial markets, destroy financial records, and redistribute wealth in America. Its primary target was E Corp, one of the largest conglomerates in the world with massive financial interest. And Tyrell Wellick became aware of Elliot and F Society's activities and wanted to join. And the very day after the hack, Elliot was in Wellick's SUV. He realizes that he'd lost 3 days, but right now Wellick's whereabouts are unknown. The FBI are investigating. The economy is in tatters. All familiar things, probably still going on the daily. There are many whereabouts we don't know. The economy is in tatters, and the FBI is always constantly investigating. But anyway, old E Corp is assuring America that it cares. Varies a series of cringe-worthy commercials, but it is what it is. Basically, this is kind of the origin of the timeline, which is based on a discussion of Romero's prison term. As agent learns that he has served 6 years in prison following a 2008 arrest for fracking. I have no idea what fracking is, but I don't know. Or maybe it's freaking. It's Phreaking. No idea, but I hate looking at it and wildly love to say it. So, Halloween 2014, Darlene purchased a Milton Moneybags mask at a 10-cent store in Chinatown. At Ellie's apartment, he shows her that he has their father's Mr. Robot jacket. They discuss E Corp, and that led to their father's death. And when Elliot puts on the mask, it gives him the idea of taking down E Corp. Christmas season 2014, Mobley approaches Romero at Coney Island to recruit him as a member of F Society. Romero, believing Mobley wants the fun Society arcade, which he manages, tells Mobley the history of the place. February 7th, 2015, the E Corp was hacked and the server CS30 was infected. March 2nd, 2015, Terry Colby was arrested. March 31st, 2015, Elliot infiltrated Steel Mountain to plant the Raspberry Pi. May 9th, 2015, the hack is executed. And that's where we are right now. Kind of in the days following the attack, obviously the American economy is collapsing. Wellick is soon identified as having committed to the attack and is being sought by the FBI, but it remains unclear if he was actually involved. President Obama responds to the attack, and unfortunately, while the F9 attack was thought to redistribute wealth and benefit the average working person, it instead had a significant number of unanticipated consequences, including reduction of the U.S. to a largely cash economy for E Corp's financial customers. E Corp's ATMs are limited to 50 per person, which is very little in an ATM because you can normally get 200, which I also think is a little bit little. I feel like it should be at least 1,000, but it is what it is. E Corp credit cards no longer work. There's been protests along the world, including at the E Corp headquarters, of significant loss of banking records, including records of bank balances and mortgage payments, the retirement that people prepaid for services, including, or the requirement, not retirement, that people prepay for services, including restaurants. Many private businesses cannot afford waste management services, which has sparked a cottage industry of roadside garbage, burning at discount rates to combat trash pileups, especially in New York City. There's already so much trash. And then E Corp is defied a bailout by the U.S. government and is facing federal foreclosure on various properties. And Price is basically trying to appeal to China for bailout money and receive a $3 trillion loan. Oh my gosh, I can't. That's so much money. Especially when you think about like the people that hacked him, like literally people with a mental illness got to you, baby. But here we are, Here we are 30 days. So before we go into more of the episode, life is happening, let's break down a little bit of hacking. So basically, in bitwise operations, mask is a data that turns bits to 1 on or 0 off, and it's basically used to put images over a screen, such as like movie, video game images, or in early games such as Pac-Man, and then the extension .tc indicates that a file has been encrypted with TrueCrypt. TrueCrypt was a freeware encryption program used for on-the-fly encryption, discontinued in 2014 following issues with unfixed file security problems, and Tango Down refers to a terrorist that has been eliminated. It's usually used by U.S. Army Special Forces, and it's also a Twitter signal that the hacktivist, The Jester, has completed a hack. So we were shown kind of in a brief flashback that Terrell recorded an F Society video the night that he visited Elliot. Elliot has gone off the grid. He's been living with his mother and maintaining a repetitive routine because he wants to just, not have Mr. Robot in his head constantly, which I think is very fair because that guy's a little wild. It's very hard to talk about season 2 in a way, knowing how season 4 ends because there's so much going on. But I'm not going to reveal season 4 ending. I think I am going to come out and talk about how in season 2, he basically puts a guise on us, old Elliot, because as you know, we're hello friend, that's us. He is in prison the whole time, but he lies about that or like tries to hide that he went to prison. Basically it was, the therapist boyfriend put him in, which was the best for him in some ways, and kind of messed up that he ends up getting out for good behavior, but soon is an FBI most wanted, but we'll get to all of that. Basically, we have another flashback where Mr. Robot, his dad, as we now know from the reveal of season 1, went from not punishing him and taking him out to a movie because he's a good kid and then pushing him out the window for telling his mom about his dad's cancer. And this is truly, I think, Elliot's like first trauma that brought on to mental illness. As you know, I recently got certified in mental health youth first aid, and trauma is one of the first things that can bring out mental illness. However, I had speculated that I had figured there was some brain damage, because like, how do you fall out a window and not damage your head, especially if you were like pushed, you're not guarding yourself, and you're a child. Obviously it's like the 80s, so maybe it wasn't the most accurate approach, but they are saying that he was concussed, but there was no brain damage. I mean, a concussion is a little bit of brain damage, but whatever. He just had like a broken forearm. And going off of, obviously, that there was Obama giving a statement, I do wonder if that was actual Obama or an Obama lookalike. I kind of love to think that it was actual Obama, because the show is very good. And Obama was clearly always interested in the media. I think that much is evident, especially as, if you notice on Netflix, there's a lot of involvement with the Obamas. And I like some of the shows that they've created. So Elliot has made a new friend who is Black, which is good. Good to keep your friendships diverse. This person's name is Leon, and he likes to wax poetic and philosophical about Mad About You, and he likes Seinfeld and likes the basketball game. Elliot is very much, about the routine right now. That is all he is focused on, is just keeping things simple, keeping things healthy. I too need to build a routine, Elliot. However, as routine is not the only solution to multiple personality disorder, Mr. Robot is still appearing to him and tormenting him and refusing to tell him what happened to Terrell. And Elliot sees Carla on the basketball cards. She is known as Hot Carla. She's a hairdresser, a pyromaniac, and a transgender woman. We honestly have a lot of transgender representation in Mr. Robot, which is surprising in the hacker world. You would maybe not think that. You would maybe think it being predominantly like masculine, but this is a very LGBTQ show, which I think is why it ends up being on my favorites. I really liked it. I will say, like, season 2 is not my favorite. Carla's dead name is Jack, and she spends a lot of time at a local hair salon, learning from female role models and experimenting with cosmetics. When her father beat her for playing dress up in her sister's clothes, she had found kind of sympathy from this hairdresser, Carla, and she had also given her a name and a place to live, and then also made her leave her dead name and also take Carla's name as well. Unfortunately, when Carla visits clubs, she gets confronted, harassed, groped by transphobic aggressives, and triggers multi-cars explosions. So, don't mess with trans people. You know what I mean? As we know that Elliot is in prison, although we don't know at this time of the episode, right? That is something that's revealed to us. It does bring into the complex of a trans person in a men's prison, right? Because of the way that the government works, doesn't make any sense. But unfortunately, she is often the target of physical and sexual abuse. And the only way that she can find relief is in the library. And she often, she starts a fight over stolen tubes of lipsticks. And Elliot often is conducting offline research on her, and has no interest in being saved by Carla herself. But anyway, something that's a bit interesting about him seeing Carla is that she's seen burning a book in a red wagon, which is interesting because the book has the text of Waiting for Godot, which is a 2-act play in which 2 characters wait endlessly for a character named Godot. There's a lot of arguments over the meaning of the play. Maybe I'll do a review about Waiting for Godot, because that's been on my list to watch and observe. I don't know much about it, just from a brief, being in theater, a little bit about it. But it is about futility and pointlessness of some enterprises, which I think is kind of prison commentary on that. Anyway, so maybe you're wondering, hey, what's up with Darlene? What's she doing? She's everybody's favorite character. She was definitely mine. Darlene is now leading F Society, and she targets this one woman who unfortunately happens to be Asian. Please don't do Asian hate crimes. I know that there's a rise. I just literally watched the Bachelor episode where the one Asian woman was being like harassed online, and it's like, guys, like, what are we doing? Like, stop. Like, I know so many wonderful Asian people. Like, it's, you know, the whole thing of like China against America is so rooted in racism, and I hate it so much. And we'll get into that a little bit because obviously F Society is working with China, and I think that Mr. Robot honestly handles this very tactfully because there's such like a patriotism against that. And I'll be honest, I don't know all the history of the reasons for like why the other side is so believing in that, but it just is very frustrating because, you know, like there's just so many people, you know, in both of these countries that don't deserve the racism and hate. But anyway, so this woman has this like Fitbit smart house thing, and it malfunctions. Later, you're going to turn out and see like, why did the F Society target this woman in her house? Was it only because she lived in like kind of a smart house thing, so it was easy for them to mess with and get into? No, you'll later find out that this is a woman who snickered when the outcome of the trial for their dad kind of getting compensation for literally getting cancer due to E Corp. She like snickers when they win. So bad look. Don't know if she deserves what she gets in the end, but whatever. Darlene has the house. It's a pretty cool house. So Gittison is under the FBI. He's in Allstate, and Gittison is also just thinking of like turning in Elliot and doing all of this stuff because obviously, you know, Elliot was hacking and doing many illegal things, and he doesn't want to have to deal with that. And Elliot is often having these like fantasies of having to imagine to like kill Gideon, put a bullet in brain, even though he's like one of his mentors and friends. Also, you'll come to see we've got a new character, this FBI agent, who you might be like, who I was like the whole time, I was like, why does this person look so familiar? This person looks so familiar. Who is this person? What is happening? Why is this going on? And you'll turn out that it's Meryl Streep's daughter. I'm trying to find her FBI agent name. I'm so terrible. Oh, her name is Dominique. I really like her performance. She definitely takes after her mom. I honestly think she's maybe better than her mom. But I really like this character a lot. And she will continue to get more interesting as the seasons go on. So, on top of that, the person who Darlene's house hacked, I just found her name too. It is Susan Jacobs. Maybe she's not Asian. Maybe I just assumed that. I have no idea. But anyway, she went to like a London business school. She has a brother named Paul. She's married and divorced. She was in the courtroom when E Corp was absolved in the Washington Township scandal in 1995, the year that I was born. And she sat in the back behind Sudaman and laughed when the verdict was given, which is not good. She's the general counsel of E Corp, and she usually kills like any lawsuit brought against them, many of which involve deaths. And she's got this nickname of Madam Executioner, which is kind of ironic given the way that it ends up for her, but we'll save that to when we get there. But she's got a smart house home in NYC, which is the one that they take over, and she then goes to her home in Greenwich. Nice to have options, you know what I mean? She also has a pacemaker, which I don't think that they are aware of at the time, and she has an affair with a presiding judge. So that's the house that they're living in. Can't tell any of that from the way the house looks. You definitely have to read on an online forum. But anyway, so force her to move out, right? With Mobley's assistance, Darlene starts to execute a ransomware hack on the Bank of E-Corp. So ransomware they're using to store E-Corp, and it's a form of malware that disables the system and encrypts data and sends a message to the target demanding money to return the system or data back to the target. It often includes a nod to the computer hacktivist, The Gesture, who has claimed to hacked a number of sites ranging from Westboro's Baptist Church to WikiLeaks, and just a bunch more. I don't know a lot about that, but it is what it is. Let's talk about some Easter eggs. The cover of Elliot's composition book includes the brand Confixure Industries and the handwritten words Red Wheelbarrow, which then I think also goes to Waiting to the Godot. The QR code drawn in this journal is actually operational, and it leads to this 1990s style website for Confixure Industries, and it's currently under construction, and it's optimized for Netscape 3.0, which was released in 1996. Various theories on social media are like, is this an early site that Elliot developed when he was learning to code? Red Wagon is one of the first of many red signals and warnings that have begun to appear in season 2. This is maybe a call out to the director M. Night Shyamalan, who uses red signals as warning through his film like The Sixth Sense. And Darlene's IP, which can be seen when she types the final code that triggers the hack on eCorp Bank, is active, and it does link to a website with a 24-hour countdown. When the countdown concludes, it displays, "I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that a principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale." And that was Thomas Jefferson, babies. Sometimes I think that people are like, oh yeah, the founding fathers, and then they look at what they said and they like don't say anything, right? Because I feel like bankers are like so pro founding fathers, and it's like, Thomas Jefferson didn't even want y'all. You know what I mean? He didn't want anything to do with you, but also he was like a terrible rapist. So, you know, like, it's just, people are people, and the idealization is like real bad. So Darlene also has a good bit where she saws off the golden balls of the Raging Bull in front of Wall Street to make protest signs. I kind of love it. Iconic, you know? We see another one of the fallout of the 5/9 hack, where there's this elderly woman who was at the bank, and she's like, I'm done canceling. Like, I can't give you money if my bank is closed or like my account is closed. Like, so we're seeing like the implications of this changing world. And I think it is like a very good thing. It's like kind of that thing of like, oh, you think a hack is going to like change everything and make everything better, and it doesn't, right? And now you have to like re-strategize of like how to fix it now. So in the hack that Darlene instigates now, they have this kind of gesture talk to them, and it's like, okay, and it says, you can have one of your chief officers bring us $5.9 million, which, whoo, I can make some movies on that. You know what I'm saying? And if you're interested in that, contact me to figure out how to invest. Would love to talk to you. But anyway, so there can be no police around. That's the dealio, right? And then they end up burning the money, $5 million, even more than $5 million, to Phil Collins, which is a vibe, absolute vibe. I also would like to talk about how the fact that Mr. Robot is so mean to Elliot is like one of those mental demons using a friend's face, you know what I mean? Using somebody that he trusted and had a good relationship to him, and just like burning and like using the worst parts of him. It's like, it's so cruel and sad. Like, I really feel like this. One of the things I didn't love is that it's like so cringe, but the one boss was like, oh, for confidence, you need a con, which is cringe. Then we've got old Daryl from The Office in here, Craig Robinson himself. Devastating. I love this. I think 2015, I feel like maybe The Office was over. It must have been, I'm assuming. Let me find his character's name for you. I don't remember it because I've just been calling him Craig from The Office. But his name is, excuse my God, oh my gosh, what a mess this little podcast is. His name is Ray. And so I forgot, it was kind of forgettable. But yeah, so his name is Ray, and ideally he's like trying to become Elliot's friend because he wants Elliot to hack something for him. And Elliot just basically Harry Potter's to raise Draco Malfoy and is just like, no, I'm not gonna hack for you. Nah, son. And it humiliating, like devastating. It's so funny too, because like, he plays such a likable guy in the office, and then he's trying to play this badass. I think he's better suited to the likable guy in the office, and I think they wanted him to have this friendly thing because it's more interesting than like kind of the bad guy, and you kind of have that with White Rose already. Also in a more interesting thing because you have it transgendered, which is nice. But anyway, it's just super hilarious to me that Elliot just is like, nah. So Angela, however, is thriving. She's a badass at work. She gets a segment how she wants it. She's telling on girl bosses when she sees someone doing something. She's kind of cashing in, you know? So the lawsuit that Angela was going to pursue seems to be abandoned because she wasn't going to quit at the lawyer's insistence. And she's just, it also seems like she's been brainwashed in a lot of ways, and we will get into that when that comes up as well. And Terrell's wife, Joanna, is continuing domination, but she won't let men be seen with her. And at one point, she gets this music box, which has a phone underneath it, but she misses the call. And a lot of like Angela's stuff, she's got like this one story with like women are sleeping for men for millions of dollars, and she's like, you know, I know what kind of women you are now. And Angela's like, you know, I'm just negotiating. And you know, they keep asking if she's alone. And in a lot of Angela's scenes, there's like a cameo of an inconspicuous man and an inconspicuous woman, which also leads to this kind of like design, like, you know, are things happening because people are like making them happen. Especially particularly interesting is like on Dom's whiteboard, there's the word like Bearstein, as in like the Bearstein Bears and the Mandela effect. A lot of that will come into play in these next seasons, which is something that I really, really love and admire about this show. Elliot's memory still ain't the best. He'll like see Daryl last night but doesn't remember. And then this guy called Brock is killed Gideon, who was going to rat out Elliot, because often White Rose is looking out for Elliot, has like a very specific path for him, which really blows my mind as we get deeper into the seasons. He claims that he shot Gideon for his country and literally shot him asking about his boyfriend leaving. And he is referred to as a crisis actor, which a lot of conspiracy theorists love. They think that there are actors that are hired to basically fulfill government duties. Like a lot of people think that the January 6th people were crisis actors. Here's the thing. There's a crisis actor. I feel like the salary has to be so good. And I'm like, where can I sign up? Where's the backstage for crisis acting? Like, you know what I mean? I was like, am I a good enough actor to crisis act? Why hasn't anyone approached me? I'm like, where do they also get these actors for the crisis acting? I'm like, do they go to like high schools and being like, you know what? You got the ability to be a crisis actor. You should think about it. $millions, one role. You know what I mean? Like where... I don't understand. And it is a little bit weird because one of the January 6 people I do know was an actor because I saw on Facebook a casting director had outed his information. And obviously, like, a lot of people can act. I know a lot of conservative actors. I don't know necessarily the reasons why for the beliefs. I just know that I have met them and I've had a lot of Trump conversations backstage, and it's pretty wild because I think Hollywood is painted as so liberal, and there is honestly a lot of conservatism in this town that I wish more people talked about. Like, I wish there was just more of an honesty. But I get that it is people doing what they gotta do. Then, because Elliot wakes up from this dissociative state, he's greeted on the end by Tyrell, so that means that Tyrell is not dead. He is living. Also, Philip Price meets with 3 government officials: Janet Yellen, Chair, Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System; Jack Lew, Secretary of the Treasury; and Mary Jo White, Chair of the Secretaries and Exchange Commission. And they are the 3 highest-ranking official officers in the United States, in case you didn't know anything about that, because I didn't know either. And there was a lot of theories, which a lot of people guessed right, because it was either about this season with the monotony of like eating in the same place for meals, and the Spartan kind of layout of his room, that he was either in prison or in a mental institution. Not a day goes by where I don't wish that Elliot was in a mental institution, you guys. Like, I really wish that he was getting mental health help, because I feel bad that he suffers in the way that he does in this season. I think this season is particularly rough because in the other season, he doesn't know that he's sick. And in this season, it's like the beginning of the fight. I think the 4th season is particularly hard because it's like, it's getting to the end of it. And it's brutal. It's brutal. So Romero recounts the violent history of the Fun Society arcade where they used to work out. It was a freak show and people who have dwarfism sanctuary, and it had like a scaled down cityscape, a lion-faced man, a limbless woman. It had a lot of success on Coney Island, but then unfortunately the husband woke up one Christmas morning and killed his family with a kitchen knife and then slit his own wrists. So, oof. And then in the 1960s, Mary Megan Fisher purchased the venue, made an arcade, games, and instilled a range of attractions: the arcade machines, skee ball, and a little bar, so she'd get drunk with her friends and shoot pool at night. But then she got drunk, fell off a bar stool, landed hard in a pool cue, which impaled her through the neck and killed her. And then in 2000, Ned Bossum opened the arcade under the name Fun Society Amusement, LLC. Harold Bossum wanted his father to sell the property, and when that failed, he stole his twin brother's hunting rifle and shot Ned in the face. The rifle kicked back so hard that he tripped and fell out of a 20-story window, and Harold's twin brother Clyde was arrested for double homicide, sent to prison where he became Romero's cellmate. So when Romero was released, he received the keys from Clyde, who urged him to burn it down. But instead, Romero took advantage of the legal limbo to have the safe house. So that's the history of that. Pretty interesting, scary. Sounds like a Ryan Murphy American Horror Story episode. But basically, he got into it because Mobley was saying that, you know, they really wanted to get back at the prison system because all of the corporation is so tight. And that's why Price, too, like, wouldn't back down, even though he was urged to resign because they had filmed them burning the $5 million, which is even more embarrassing. Like, now everybody can see that. Like, it looks, like, so tactless for the wealthy. Yeah, he won't stop down because he thinks that business is a con and he obviously wants power. So, in the illusion that Elliot is his mom's house, we all know he's already in prison. The whole reason he says that he's at his mom's house is because his mom is very strict and that there's no internet, so he can't hack. And he's still, like, losing his mind, like, when he was talking to Gideon, rest in peace. He was, like, imagining that he had, like, a gunshot and then had, like, a headache and is just, like, not very stable. So Tyrell is speaking cryptically, talking about, like, the night that they became gods. And he's like, Mr. Robot is like, you know, I got the end of my deal. I provided you Tyrell. But Elliot is like, I don't know what is real. I'm not talking to you. And then poor Mobley comes to Romero's house, whose mother is talking on the phone, cutting up credit cards, talking about her cataracts, thinking that there are, like, ghosts everywhere. And then Mobley, unfortunately, goes and sees Romero in the back room, in the backyard, and finds him with, like, a bullet in the back of his head. He's on the ground. It looks like he also is, like, overdosed. There's, like, a bunch of drugs around him, too. So, unfortunately, Romero is dead, which sucks. I guess that's why they maybe added more black characters, but very mean. And I guess they're kind of showing, like, they're killing off the old F Society. And to be fair, those weren't, like, my favorite characters from season 1. And I think that is a result of some of these actions that are happening in season 2. But it is unfortunate. We also see that Ray is talking to somebody who is not there at well, showing that maybe there are also some mental health issues going on with him. Leon then gets Elliot some Adderall because he knows a lot of contraband, and Mr. Robot is like, come on, don't do this. Like, this is not what you need to do, because I think anytime he does medicine, like, it fucks with Mr. Robot's existence. And people might be like, how does Adderall help with hallucinations? Because I was wondering that too, because we all know it's for ADHD. Unless you didn't know that, no worries. You don't have to have antidepressant knowledge the way that I do. Adderall is a stimulant. It improves attention and wakefulness, but in larger doses, side effects include euphoria, insomnia, and it actually can give hallucinations and paranoia. And Elliot takes 200 mg, which is the maximum, like way over the maximum, because the maximum therapeutic dose is 40. So he is using, essentially, unfortunately. And that is not best. We also talk about, we finally learn what freaking is. Freaking is a skill of attenuating audio frequencies to access and manipulate telephone systems before telephones became digital. And Romero is now dead. And Trenton brings up kind of Gideon's murder in relation to his death. Darlene is all blaming it on Romero's drug business, and that's like what got him to trouble. And Darlene doesn't really want to talk to Trenton because she's out of the F Society, because she doesn't like that they like burned money. And Darlene is very like, we had to do that to kill the confidence. And they're both worried, her and Mobley, that like the Dark Army is turning against them and like after them. And Darlene's like, they only know about me and Elliot, like, please chill. And Mobley wants to go hide out with a friend in Arizona. And she's like, okay, let me just talk to Elliot and make sure that it's like cool that you leave. And Mobley is like, I don't trust either of them. Like, remember the time that, Elliot pulled a gun on Romero? Like, who's to say he didn't do it? So Ray is then speaking with a man with a rat tail and a bruised face as a man's wife and daughter cower in fear in a kitchen. There's lost Bitcoin, crashing servers, and Rat Tail is like unable to crack the code, and so that's why Ray is like really pursuing Elliot. Lone Star is like, we need to do maybe like more assault to get them to behave, but Ray is like just confident that Elliot will handle. So then we see Elliot smiling after picking up the Adderall out of his vomit. I can't, it's so gross. But he hasn't slept in 3 days. He's very happy talking to Lena about Seinfeld, cheering on the basketball game. But reality is being really affected with computer sounds. And he says on day 5 that he's like, hey, friend, actually sleeping isn't working. Crazy. I wish it worked that way too, where you didn't have to sleep, Elliot. I hate that I have to miss life by going to sleep, but it is the way of the world. But his world is becoming glitchy, and he starts seeing girls in F Society masks in his house, and he's crashing by day 6. So now it's June 21st. Angela's all dressed up, doing her positive affirmations. She arrives at a restaurant where there's protesters outside, and it's barely empty. She finds 2 men with Price, Jim Chutney and Saul Weinberg. And they want Price to pay up front because that's the new policy in an economic crisis. And then we cut to Dom, who's masturbating and having cyber sex. And she's like begging for it. It must be really lonely to be an FBI agent. And you will be happy that she has a romantic storyline that I really, really liked, and is what solidified Mr. Robot for me as being one of my favorite TV shows. Of course, if you go lesbian, it's happening. So she asked Alexa when the end of the world is, and she is looking at a picture of the FBI list that was leaked. Elliot is still journaling, looking at a page of his numbers and coding. He's becoming delirious, and he's listening to the story of how this man talks about how he punched a Native American clerk and believes, or not Native American, unclear what the ethnicity is, maybe Indian. But anyway, believes that God came to him in the form of sunshine, which I don't, if you're punching people and seeing sunshine, please seek help. Let's not punch people, you know. Anyway, so Elliot is just really mad at God for the death of Gideon and hates organized religion, religious wars, poorly written sci-fi, imaginary friends, and that's like as real as Elliot has gotten in a long time with us. And Price tells Angela, you know, like Jim and Saul, oh, they're such good family men, you know, even though they covered up the Washington Township leak. I love that for them. It's like, oh, but they're so good to their family. And it's like, well, they kill and destroy other people's family. Amazing. Maybe they're not so good, you know? But that dichotomy, I was watching this like one BoJack Horseman, which I've covered in kind of a two-parter. I've been thinking about going back to BoJack Horseman and doing a series, but we'll see about that. Just because I really, really like that show and I want to do it more justice as I learn more about the entertainment industry. But anyway, so she receives at old Angela this like CD with proof of their insider trading that would put them in jail for years. But they're such good family men. But that's like the thing. It's like what I was referencing to BoJack Horseman of this like, you can be a bad person and a good person at the same time. Like, we're all just guys. Like, there are dualities to that. Like, it's like, does this insider trading and covering up the leak make them a bad person? Like, to me, I have to say yes, because, like, your actions do add up. But it's also, like, if they're good family men, like, does that matter at the end of the day? Like, when is your bad action something you can't cross to? Which is, like, a very big thing of Mr. Robot. And I think also why season 2 doesn't work, because we now have Elliot constantly lying to the audience when it's like he's kind of an anti-hero that we need him to be very truthful. Also, I think that they are just kind of running out of steam in the second one, because you have to like now adjust to like Mr. Robot's identity is revealed, which was so like poignant to on the first one of it not being. So now you have that kind of like year in television where you change the premise of your first season, so it's like a new thing. I think it gets there in the next 2 seasons, but it's still like finding its way in this one. But anyway, Price is like, you need to remove your emotion, Angela, before you decide if you're going to ruin their lives, which I think is interesting and kind of like a common theme in Angela's arc throughout these seasons. So Ray reveals that his wife passed away 5 years ago and he still talks to her, and Ray is like, Elliot, we're like a lot alike, which I think is maybe speaking on to that they have shared mental health issues. And then Dom is outside of Mrs. Romario's house. She is like, hey, I'll roll joints for you, because she's got cataracts, so she can't see, which is rather nice of her for the FBI, because I don't think it was federally legal marijuana at that time. But she agrees to do it, so she'll be let inside. And they talk about like a chubby boy who would come around, which is Mobley, I'm pretty sure. And Miss Romario is moving. Dom gets her a drink and is like looking through the papers, which are a lot of computer printouts. And that is when she finds a flyer for like the end of the world party, which is going to lead her to F Society. So Ray is still in his grief, talking about how his like wife was a perfect driver, yet still died. And he's like, listen, control isn't real. Life is just one big fall. And he then is kind of like, Mr. Robot is taking over this relationship to help Elliot go with Ray. Ray also has diabetes. And also, I just want to say, I love the DA Dom's face so much. It's just like so sad. I'm sure she's seen some shit, but I really, really like her performance. So this next episode starts with a flashback, 2014, where Darlene and Elliot are watching this movie, which is called The Careful Massacre of the Bordeaux, and it has like the F Society mask in it. And Elliot reveals that he was fired around Memorial Day for a violent outburst at work and is now sentenced to anger management therapy. And Darlene hasn't visited her mom in a while because their mom always badmouths their father. And Darlene wishes that she remembered her dad better. And then Elliot has like the Mr. Robot jacket. And he agrees that he's going to go see, like, go be a part of like Allstate, which Angela was recommending, who also I forgot to say during her beautiful affirmations is like, she is stunning. She looks like Amanda Seyfried every single time. I literally for a long time thought she was played by Amanda Seyfried. But anyway, he's like really considering taking down E Corp from her, and Darlene is really freaked out about how much like he's thought about it. And he's like, yeah, it's the aftermath of it that's like the hard part. In real life, Darlene is coming to go see him, and Elliot is like, I don't think you should put yourself in danger, like, with continuing F Society. And Darlene is just kind of mean and is like, well, I wish Mr. Robot would help me then. And Dom is like showing, they found like the Fun Society arcade from the End of the World flyer, and they find DJ Mobley, even though that leads to like an average DJ from Las Vegas. But she finds like a bullet casing from behind one of the game cabinets. Joanna, meanwhile, is suffering because their funds are running low, and E Corp has now frozen Tyrell's severance package. And Angela's still positive affirmations and is seeing always again like the inconspicuous man and woman. They're always around like in the scene. And it seems that she has told on Jim and Saul, which the protesters love. Elliot and Ray are playing chess. And Elliot's like, you need practice. So Elliot starts to play by himself. And Ray's like, you should get something off your mind and confess. Ray's like, I've done a lot of dark things myself. And Elliot kind of wonders if the confession would help because Mr. Robot keeps like appearing and threatening suicide. And Angela meets Antara Ninar, and they're both watching like the news of the E Corp's arrests. And Angela thinks that what Price is doing for her and her job and the apartment is just leverage for her. And she's like, I think that he's doing it because of like the law settlement. And just so if we don't remember, Nanar is her lawyer. I might be totally saying her last name wrong, and I'm sorry about that. So Mr. Robot plays a game with Elliot, so he's like playing a game with himself. This is like where the hard thing of his like disorder gets in. I'm like, I don't know, is he moving as Mr. Robot? Is he moving as Elliot? Who knows? He's like, if you win, you know, the winner will get control, and I've got knowledge of Terrell and the missing 3 days that you have. And so Elliot goes to therapy with Krista, thank goodness. But Krista wants to talk to Mr. Robot, but Elliot doesn't want to legitimize him, is like very scared it's going to give him too much power if he meets the therapist. And Krista is like, you should not destroy this part of yourself. Like, it's here for a reason. And then we see White Rose, who's putting her makeup on, which I kind of love White Rose. Like, for one, this is like one of the first trans representation that we have, or sort of like gender non-conforming. Like, the LGBTQ in Mr. Robot is surprising, refreshing, and I really like it. It's also like, maybe some people have problems with it because it's like the trans person is kind of the villain, but I don't know. This is like an anti-hero story, so the villains are the heroes. So it's very, very interesting because White Rose is actually like the prime economic minister of like China, and so is like in daytime just like a regular guy in a suit, right? And then this like beautiful fashionista behind closed doors, and it's like, it's really prominent. It's also like, of course a trans woman would want to take down society. Like, that's like almost the epitome of what society doesn't want you to be, to like choose womanhood, to choose that much against the patriarchy. It's very powerful. But it's also very interesting because she'll like be putting on her makeup and then talking in her male voice And they're talking about like that they're going to use Angela to achieve like keeping this plant open. And Price gets really annoyed at this like ticking clock, and he's like, pressure needs to cook in order to push the president to swing a United Nations vote. And White Rose just hangs up when Price asks her for more time because her assistant enters the room, and she's very displeased that Price is like still going for his like eCoin strategy. And they talk about stage 2, which is 6 months from complete. And the assistant then tips off White Rose that like Dom has now discovered the arcade. And she's like, hey, what about my earrings? And then kisses the man. Like, I love her. She's my favorite villain ever. So Scott, Sharon's wife, who Tyrell killed, comes in. He's very angry. He's been drinking. And Joanna, offers this deal to incriminate Tyrell in the death of Sharon in exchange for like the severance package. And Scott is like, nope, I'm going to give Tyrell's child what he deserves, which is nothing, which is super cruel. Like, it's a baby, guys. It's a baby. So Darlene gets off the subway because she's paranoid about this man walking behind her. And she just keeps getting more and more paranoid. And she sees like a group of people with F Society masks. One grabs her and tells her an address. It's Cisco, her boyfriend. He dumps her phone and like meets her at a bar. And he's like, hey, the FBI found the arcade. They've linked it to Romario. And she's like, is this the Dark Army? And Cisco's like, no. And Darlene's like, we need to keep Elliot out of this. Like, he's too fragile right now. And Cisco's like, listen, the situation is already broken. Like, you gotta go tell him. And Darlene is like, you need to just let me be upset. They fuck. Cisco then is like, listen, the Dark Army is nervous that somebody flipped. And Darlene's like, nobody did that. And he's like, Romero was looking into like Operation Bearstein, which is about like the Bearstein Bears. And that's a heavy surveillance project. Darlene's like, we should just get out of the city. But Cisco's like, you're going to look guilty. It's a death sentence. He's like, you got to stop acting tough and like, let me help you. So Leon is then talking to Ellie about like the Good Samaritan law. And Elliot talks about his own existence, and he's like, are you trying to be here in like a cosmic sense? Because existence can be beautiful and sometimes can be ugly too. Like, you got to find your future worth fighting for. And Joanna admits that she didn't love Scott, like, because he's not rich enough, and it, like, that didn't make her happy, and that she doesn't really need to be anything more than they, like, currently are. I think this season is also very hard because Elliot feels very powerless, like, so fragile, as Darlene said. Oh, yeah, Joanna says all that stuff also to Derek, because he wants to take her to Madrid, but she just starts crying, and she's like, I'm just dating you because you're poor, you know, an aspiring DJ. You can't afford the lifestyle that she's accustomed to, but whatever. They don't make her happy anyway, so she loves him just the way that he is. Elliot, like, is talking about this future that he's envisioning, like a romantic dinner with Angela, reuniting with Lloyd Chung, his beautiful girlfriend, Cisco and Darlene becoming engaged, to dinner with Tyrell, Joanna and their older son, apologizing to Bill Harper, getting a hug, and all of his friends and family are there, as well as Ray, Leon, Qwerty the fish, and even the viewer. And the E-Corp tower in the background is collapsing. He's like, this is the future he wants to fight for. So he goes to Mr. Robot to play chess. They reach a stalemate. He reminisces about how his father first taught him to code using a chess computer game. And he's like, you know, Mr. Robot, he's not real, and he's not my dad. There's 2 more stalemates. And then he's like, man, this is really a statistical improbability. And Elliot's like, let's reset. But Mr. Robot throws the board away and reminds him, like, that his friends in future are outside of the isolation that he needs to, like, control him. Which is tough. It is I really like that he wants to fight for the world. Like, it's very sweet. But it's really true with, like, Mr. Robot being like, okay, you're not even going to win the game. Like, I'm tossing away. Like, it's very much what depression is like. It's like, oh, you thought you had hope. Like, oh, you think it's this. Like, I just thought a way around where you're not going to have hope. Like, it truly, really sucks. And I think that's why the season is hard, too, because this is such heavy focused on Elliot's depression of, I think, the realization of Mr. Robot, one, not being his dad, right, of him being crazy, of him, like, his dad is now alive in this unhealthy way to him, like, and the real truth is like, depression isn't interesting, it's really mean. And Price is waiting in the car, and Angela comes in and she's like, I want an office, like, I want the Mean Girls job, I want this promotion. You know, I know E Corp has never changed on a single point of the lawsuit settlement, and I know about the third-party inspections on the Washington Township plant. I am willing to convince the class to move all these contingencies in exchange for this. And Price just denies it all and strokes her hair. And Angela's like, I'm not wrong. And he's like, you know, just go home. Like, he does not take her seriously. And obviously, I think knows that he's going to have the upper hand if he's working with White Rose. So Darlene is asking Elliot for help. They have this kind of emergency code. She's like, please just, like, find a computer and get on IRC. And Mr. Robot walks up and Elliot is like, you want Mr. Robot, not me. But Darlene is very much like, no, I want you. Because obviously she can't trust Mr. Robot, who can, you know, because their gov is like, you know, it's your voice that makes you special. And he's gonna have to hack the FBI. So you need somebody very much who's going to be there. And Mr. Robot is like, Elliot, like, let's just not do this. Like, don't confess. And Ray enters and Elliot's like, yeah, I'm going to help you with your computer problem. So Ray calls in his associate Lone Star, tells Elliot of biblical figures who heard voices too, like, saying that, like, he thinks that that's, like, making you, like, a sign of somebody, like, super cool, right? Which is, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of debate on that. Like, I can't weigh in on opinion. And Lone Star sits in a corner to kind of watch as Ray leaves and is like, Elliot, don't look where you shouldn't. And Elliot is informed by Darlene of, like, how the FBI found the arcade, that the Bernstein surveillance is happening, and Romario is dead. And he's like, okay, wait for my instructions. I'll let you know how we're going to hack the FBI. Same-sex marriage is legalized in the United States, which is amazing. But that places that the events in this episode are around June 26, 2015, about 6 weeks following the 5/9 hack. At one point, the Gaon Zhang shows Dom are from the Qin dynasty, which is the final ruling dynasty in China. Ran from 1644 to 1912. The embroidered yellow dress was owned by royalty, and during this time, yellow clothing could only be worn by members of the royal family. Zhang also quotes Macbeth to Dom, which is life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. A very typical little quote. And at the Chinese airport, this is like a deleted scene that didn't make it. Dom, Santiago, and a female agent are waiting in customs. Dom says she doesn't ever want to fly again because she gets very sick despite being medicated, and she's worried that this trip is going to be a waste of time. And the female agent gives a bunch of exposition of, like, why they're there, and then Jesse arrives warning them of the air, the water, and the data warming charges. And there was another deleted scene that was cut, which is at the E Corp building lobby where Angela is waiting for the elevator when a group of people with FBI badges arrive and surround her, also waiting, and she's super nervous. They all enter, and a man holds the door for Angela, but she would shake her head and not enter. So things that you didn't need, but you're getting kind of the summary of, like, what's about to happen. So Elliot is hacking the FBI from Ray's office. on the night of June 26, coding malware, putting it on a femto-cell device that will intercept traffic on a standard issue smartphones with a logic bomb that will destroy all memory if the FBI look too close. And Dom is at Steel Mountain, and the FBI are taking data tapes into evidence. In the bathroom, technicians are looking for evidence as Dom is shown where the Raspberry Pi was installed in the wall. Angela comes home to find Darlene in her apartment, and she doesn't notice her pull a USB from her laptop USB. Like, it's the laptop's doing improv, guys. I'm so tired. But anyway, Darlene talks about this mixtape CD that Angela used on Allstate, and it's like it's time to repay Elliot. And she sits Angela down and tells her the plan to install the femto-cell on the FBI floor of the E-Corp building. And Angela refuses. She is super resistant to hacking the FBI. You know, she's kind of a corporate pawn at this point. So Joanna meets Kareem in a booth. Joanna says that it's risky to be meeting outside of their usual time and place, and Kareem is paranoid about his phone being tapped and being watched. And Joanna thanks him for the information and is like, you know, don't worry, it's going to be okay. He's super paranoid that he's being followed, and he is scared that he can't do it. It's apparently very hard to track people in New York. I would believe that. So Dom comes to the FBI floor at night. She has an E-Corp employee escorted off the floor. She meets with a fellow agent who's just looking through photos of people from the end of the world party. There's reference surveillance on Joanna as a female agent recounts a dream she had of being terrorized by a man in a surgical mask. Dom denies that she dreams. They all acknowledge that they're flying to China soon, and Dom also is like, you know, I get sick easily. Darlene and Elliot are sitting at their mom's dining table, which is actually the like phone booth thing in the jail cell. And Elliot is noticing that Darlene is kind of quiet, and she brings up that like Angela doesn't want to help, and Elliot's like, I don't want her involved anyway. But Darlene's like, listen, there's no other waiting on the premises, and Mr. Robot's like, she's right, and Elliot's like, no, we'll think of another method, like no worries. So they're at the Chinese airport, the FBI, Santiago, Dom, Jesse, and the female agent with no name, because we can't bother to be named women, I guess. But anyway, Dom notices men in devil masks, which are worn by the Dark Army, passing them on the escalators. The FBI meets Minister Zhang at a government building. Zhang and Santiago pose for a photo op, and then they go behind closed doors. Santiago wants to visit the E-Corp backup sites, which is set for Tuesday, July 1st. He begins to dance around a subject when Dom bluntly brings up like the Dark Army, which draws stares from everybody because she's like following her hunch. And she's right, spot on. And Zhang is like, yeah, I'll provide a dossier before you come to the party on Monday night. And then Joanna's looking at mail, and she opens a package to find a silver rattle in a velvet bag, and she gives the rattle to the baby and plays with it. I'm assuming it's from Terrell. Ray and Elliot talk about needing an old system. Amen. Ray is worried about his motionless dog, but he concedes that Elliot really needs it. Joanna sings in Danish to her baby, and Mr. Sutherland explains that he failed to trace the package, and tracing the calls is in progress. And he's like, I followed your orders. I've killed Kareem, staging it as a robbery. Like, dang. So he was right about people following him. As he leaves, he's like, why did you have me paralyze Kareem with an injection? And Joanna was like, I wanted to give you answers and not have his death be so sudden. Because he's like, I don't want to be a ruthless murderer. And then she's singing, and she is ruthless, you know. I kind of love her, though. She's giving me Angelina Jolie vibes. And Angela meets Ollie, which was her ex. They hug. Again, the inconspicuous man and woman are seen at the bar behind them. I really want to know more of their purpose. Maybe it will be revealed to me. Ollie and Angela reminisce over their relationship. This was the bar where Ollie first professed his love. He gives her his resume, and the conversation turns to Gideon, and he wonders if, like, the mixtape CD that they had anything to do with it. And Angelina noticed him pushing his phone closer to the table. And she's like, you're recording me. And then she puts it in his beer and she's like, are you working with the FBI? But he's like, he's just saying this uncle lawyer simply told him to be careful. He's only dictated a sketch of Cisco to the FBI, and Angelina leaves like really angry, which is awful. I don't love it. Anyway, and I really, really like White Rose's Zhang's acting. It's very good. So Dom is super uncomfortable in her dress, so she grabs a drink. She talks Jesse briefly about kind of his cracksness before going to look for a toilet. And then she finds this hallway full of clocks, which is pretty cool. And Zhang is like, oh yeah, this is my collection. And Dom's like, wow, this is really rare. There's like a German clock. But she thought it was just something like her parents bought from Kmart. They talk about her being New Jersey born and raised, and she joined the FBI because of her disgust and fascination for the selfish brutality of the world. And Zhang takes her to see this painting in the library, tells her like the origin story and she opens up how she like quit law school the day before graduation because the person she was dating proposed. Zhang takes her to a dresser and shows Dom all these beautiful Chinese dresses. And she's like, oh, who do these belong? And Zhang just says his sister, which is a lie. Obviously, they're Zhang's. Zhang gets very tearful, and he's like, I wonder what the world would be like without the 5 to 9, if there are alternate realities where they're living different lives, which I also think is code of her talking about her transness. The clocks strike midnight, and they go back to the party. This scene was very cool. It is the scene that kind of sticks out to me from this season. And Dom, we learned too that the old flame was like now like state of security. Like, that's rough. It's also pretty crazy. It took me until this point in the episode to realize that Zhang and White Rose were the same person, because I'm easily fooled by a dress and a wig, you know? And Angela came after the incident with Ollie, and Elliot is like really upset that she's the plan, and she's like, why would you never agree to see me when I tried reaching out? And she's like, listen, the last time we spoke, she had told him to take care, and he didn't want to see her until he was okay. And he's like, I'm seeing my dead dad behind her. And Angela's like, I still want to be your friend, you know? And then they talk about his fish squirty getting fat. And she's going to go do the FBI job. At the Smart House, F Society militants are preparing for a bailout vote with large flying drones. Darlene promotes Vincent to be in charge and sends him on his way to D.C. And Darlene receives a phone call. Elliot realizes that RT is very capable and types into the notepad and is like, why did you stop working on the site? But RT doesn't want to answer. And Mr. Robot yells at Elliot for asking questions. And the RT indicates that there's an invite for an only tour site, which is not good. He then logs on and leaves the room, and Elliot looks and finds a black market offering drugs, hitmen, abducted underage girls, which is Ray's like real purpose of having Elliot on there, which is really bad. And Elliot is still kind of in denial. He's trying to think the best of Ray. And Mr. Robot is like, just like, don't pay attention to all that, because Mr. Robot, as you know, is very not all right as a person. Then we've got Joanna in her nightgown. She's listening to the music box and gets a mysterious phone call. She answers and she's like, Terrell, please say something. And then she hears a fire truck, which matches the fire truck passing by her home, and runs out into the street. Angela, meanwhile, is hailing a cab. There again, the inconspicuous men and women can be seen. She switches taxis. She uses a subway. She comes to the Smart House. Darlene welcomes her inside, confirming that she wasn't followed or has her phone. Trent and Mobley are there, and then Dom and the female agent are coming down the hotel lobby. Dom is wearing sunglasses, telling her about like the strange night with Zhang and how he showed her his sister's wardrobe. And it's like, this is even weirder because like I know he doesn't have a sister. Dom is so smart. It's wild. So they meet Jesse, who informs them that Santiago is on the phone yelling at someone because someone smudged the fingerprints on the Raspberry Pi. And Dom pours a cup of coffee, but gunmen enter the lobby, start firing. This scene also sticks out to me. It's super traumatic and scary. And they kill the female agent. Dom takes cover, grabs a gun of a killed man, and she shoots one of the assailants in the knee. And then he kills himself when she watches. And Lone Star abducts Elliot because they know that he knows about the RT, and it's like, I wish that he didn't look at the site, and they assault him on the sidewalk, which is unfortunate for poor Elliot. Like, I feel super, super bad for him. It's not great. So while Elliot is being beatily brutal by neo-Nazis, even though Ray, like, felt remorse for selling slaves and drugs and heavy weapons, and was fine with Elliot, releasing it to the FBI. Neo-Nazis, don't want their way of life to change. Wild how history repeats itself. I'm telling you, Mr. Robot is so relevant. And Leon ends up stopping them. Turns out Leon, Elliot's friend this whole time, has been working for the Dark Army, and he has been protecting Elliot for White Lows. And he says, eventually, Elliot, you're going to get this letter, and you have to do what it says. So that's always encouraging. Follow that letter. And, Leon just brutally murders those people, too. And then we get the big reveal that Elliot has been in prison this entire time. He admits to his therapist that he knows he's not at his mom's, that he is in prison. So that is all about that one. But yeah, I know. I remember when he was in prison, at first it was like a betrayal, and then I was like, oh, actually, this makes more sense than what was happening. So then we're on to the next episode, which is called Successor, which is basically a backup when a major system fails. And the extension P12 identifies file from a personal information exchange, which you need a password to open. And these are basically secure files used to authenticate individual on a computer or server. So F Society learns that Project Berenstain is basically illegal surveillance of 3 million people, which is crazy. I imagine there's even more numbers these days. For the 5 and 9 investigation, and they've yielded 16 prime suspects, but only one of them is deceased. And Mobley suspects that Romero is the dead suspect, which means that the FBI is close to them, which is not good. F Society then, of course, releases this information, but then Susan Jacobs ends up coming home to where they were stocked up, and basically they end up having to tie her up, and they try to blackmail her for information. And Darlene remembers Susan laughing when E-Corp was cleared in the case regarding the toxic leak that killed their dad. So, so this is not going to go well. So then Darlene ends up shocking her with a stun gun. This is like one of the... you thought the plot twist was him being in prison. When Darlene kills her, it is crazy. It ends up being fatal because of Susan's heart conditions. And she says that it was self-defense and accident, but we know. So anyway, her and Cisco, they incinerate Susan's body. And Mobley and Trenton are panic. Mobley's like having PTSD, flashing back to... where they all met at Ron's Coffee. Just kind of losing it. Because obviously this is kind of like their first dead body, you know what I mean? It's putting them into a new map. Dominique interviews the owner of Darlene's stolen gun. and brings Mobley in for questioning about the arcade. So you also have all of the flashbacks of like when they met too at Ron's Coffee. And they're still hunting for Tyrell, who Elliot shot. Moby gives her nothing, but so Dom is forced to let him go. But Mobley is like warns Trenton that they must run, but he's 2 hours late for his meet with Trenton, and someone does find her. And then we find out that Angela's fling was an FBI plant, but she ends up ditching him for an older man, who I believe is Paul from Desperate Housewives. And this is where Angela sings. She says she's really not sad about missing the dad's barbecue, and she sings Rule the World. She's 27, making six figures, flirting with this guy. I don't know. She doesn't even need to date an old guy. But then it turns out that Darlene finds out that Sisso is reporting back on her to the Dark Army, and so she ends up attacking him with a baseball bat after smashing his computer to pieces. But yeah, and I don't know, it was such a hard how do we feel about her tasering Susan in a heart condition? You know, she donated eCoin. It's not great, but yeah, she didn't even fit in the creamery. It was so awful. And they think about when they went back and like let the dogs out with her fling, but the dogs end up even dying anyway, so it's pretty rough. And Trenton is doing this all for her family, but Moby's like, you know what, we should have never done it. Like, we should have gotten out of here. You know, like, he's worried too that there's somebody in even his own house. And Trenton is like wanting her family to move, but they can't because the bank won't even let them sell. And so they find out too, like, Dom kind of traced Mobley because she was on the DJ flyer for the FBI on this like end of the world party. But anyway, the sister was going to kill Darlene, but she figured all of it out too. And it's crazy that this whole season has still taken place in jail. Like, it's okay if you're still recovering from that, like that. It's a whole lie, and we have an unreliable narrator with all of that. Darlene made this like reference to the Patrice email scandal when she was blackmailing Susan, which is about a 2012 scandal where a general and former CI directive, David Patrice, divulged government secrets to his lover, basically. And it's crazy. There's all this information we don't think about. And we can also see the inconspicuous man and woman behind Angela and Andre at the karaoke bar. And this is the one episode that Elliot doesn't appear in. I guess we let him take a break after the big reveal for all of that. But basically, Elliot is in jail because of his actions against his therapist boyfriend. So this next episode is called A Hidden Process, which is a piece of spyware that infects a machine. It's very hard to detect due to the large number of default processing running through a machine at the same time. And an .axx file is like an AXCrypt encrypted file, which encrypts a file until it's unusable. So Philip has Colby pull political strings to allow China to annex the Congo in exchange for the financial bailout of E-Corp, which is wild that this is just like what billionaires do. You know what I mean? Like annexing the Congo, what is crazy. And then Cisco finds one of F Society's members, Vincent, badly wounded, and he tries to tell Darlene that they need a hospital. And everybody, the FBI is kind of now on the fact that, like, oh, is Susan's disappearance, you know, is it a disappearance rather than a vacation? And Dominique is like, the Dark Army is going to attack Sisto's image ends up being released to the media as a 5'9" suspect. And then we later are seen by the hospital ER staff, who is end up reporting his location. And Joanna, Terrell's wife, really is trying to persuade Elliot to track the phone that she believes was left by Terrell. He ends up tracing the call to a nearby residence, but Mr. Sutherland thinks that it won't be Terrell based on how the location is. And then Elliot and Angela finally meet up to talk, and she kind of makes him realize that there are more gaps in his memory, and she's like, you can't trust Mr. Robot. And Angela is pretty much going to confess to her lawyer, admitting her part in the FBI hack. And then Dom ends up tracking Darlene and Sisto to a restaurant, but a dark army shooter opens fire on them. And yeah, it's getting dicey for surezies. It's getting dicey for sure. But anyway, basically, Elliot was persecuted by her therapist boyfriend, and he was supposed to say that he was not guilty, but he said that he was guilty, and the dog was a $1,200 felony theft, which is crazy. And then Leon was super nice to him, obviously doing anything he needs, obviously set up, and they were going to release him early because the economy is pretty much bad, so they can't keep imprisoning him. But it kind of explains also why he was so depressed. They go to see this mom, which I believe is like so white compared to them. And we find out like the head of the Dark Army killed the CEO 1995 for her project, and they're like dumping her on the grave. And Angela ends up giving the toxic waste documents to the company that would help. And she's just kind of being led down like a dark hallway. She didn't really want to do it. And she had kind of realized their connection to the F Society video because of the mask that they used to use in an old video. And she tracked her boyfriend to learn about All Save. And Elliot is basically trying to do a stage 2. It's also insane that this whole time they were trading countries. They don't care if they don't win. He just wants to drag down others. And Terrell's wife is always like, Terrell will always do whatever is necessary. You could see too that he has like other women's earrings. And Vincent, who was dying there, did things in Washington that Darlene couldn't do. And she's starting to kind of realize that Elliot is special. And she opens up about kind of an old woman who had raped her once. And her boyfriend was just saying that she was just trying to keep her safe. But Angela, before she confesses, gets taken. And as a kid, she asks, she's like scared. She's like crying during sex. She doesn't want to answer because she's going to be punished and they'll beat her. And Elliot's like kind of fantasizing about murdering his father. I think Angela was thinking about it too. And they talk about either clouds, if it's like a giraffe or a seagull. And then they have this phone with a robot voice, which is like telling you how to like open the door. Darlene is definitely going to be in trouble too because she did leave an F Society tape with her face on it at Susan's house. And Sisto went to go retrieve it, but ends up somebody being in the house there. And we do see that White Rose arranged the death of a previous E-Corp CEO for interfering with the plant. And Philip is able to calm Zhang White Rose down by saying, if China ends up loaning that E-Corp some bail money as goodwill, which ends up obviously happening. And Elliot and Mr. Robot notice that they are disconnecting from each other, which is pretty wild. So Joanna thinks that Elliot is Ollie, because that is when Elliot introduced himself to Joanna as Ollie when she met him outside of the townhouse. But yeah. Elliot was in prison for 86 days, and that number 86 is associated with the end of running out of something. And then we do see Sam Small, who is the creator of Mr. Robot, in episode 7. He's behind bars when Elliot is first being processed into jail. When this is a deleted scene that happens, but when Elliot is answering questions about his medical history at the prison, the officer is surprised that he is making complete eye contact. And when Darlene refuses to see their mother, Mr. Robot appears to Elliot, and he wants to go home, but Elliot refuses. And Mr. Robot is like, his mom is not the same as he remembers. This is all deleted scenes. And there's also one where Sister wants to know about White Rose, because that is a mythical figure in the Dark Army. And he asks what drove Elliot to start F Society, even though he knows, like, he and his sister are basically out of their minds. But how do they come up with it? And they're kind of silence. And he's like, he wishes his own story was that simple, because Sister grew up in Shanghai till he's 10. So he has limited knowledge of the Chinese. They didn't really like white boys, but the Dark Army embraced him because he could code. And then he met Darlene. And they're like, Elliot is like, we first met at Darlene's birthday 2 years ago. But Sister didn't remember because Elliot didn't stay long to party. As, you know, I wouldn't expect little introvert Elliot to stay that long to party, knowing how he is. Dominique wants the shootout to be investigated as a possible act of war by the Dark Army. But she's like told that the government is not going to upset China because they just gave the US a $2 trillion loan. So she asks Alexa if she's happy, which is very interesting. Joanna considers the phone location to be a really great gift from Tyrell. Philip uses the bailout money to strengthen eCoin, which is forcing the government to support him in keeping the pace with China and rebuilding the banking sector. Angela has been taken to this house where there's a seemingly tortured girl. Gives her a psych elevation, but they show that they didn't hurt the girl. It's makeup bruises, and it's been the Dark Army that is texting Angela. And White Rose reaches out to her and says that she should have been dead 90 days ago. And she wants Angela to believe in her cause. And she claims that her mother and Elliot's father died for a greater good. And so Angela ends up telling her lawyer to forget it and never call her again after she blacks out briefly. Elliot ends up cracking the cipher and gets into the car because he uses a lucid dreaming technique to basically watch Mr. Robot decode a message in his apartment. And he ends up like taking control on the way to a waiting cab. And then he sees that Tyrell gets in. And even though the cab driver accepts his destination, the cab driver doesn't really acknowledge Tyrell's existence and ends up kicking Elliot out for panicking. And Tyrell is like, yeah, we got stage 2 ready. Y'all are going to love it. And you're going to be really pleased. Which is wild, because I think Tyrell knows Elliot as Mr. Robot, basically. So he doesn't meet Elliot as himself. And he keeps kind of repeating the Casablanca line. I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, which is a bit funny. And one of Angela's answers to the little girl is an expert from Lolita, which is also the origin of Darlene's heart-shaped sunglasses. Which is pretty cool. And then we do have the computer in the dark room, Commodore 64, which is the first sold in 1982. Similar to the Apple one, the C64 CPU computers were integrated with connections to the monitor and peripherals, but no external solid. So it ran software off of the 5-inch floppy disk. All things that are like almost extinct now, and we have AI, which is crazy. This one and the 407 proxy authentication required is the only ones that Darlene don't appreciate. And 4 songs used in this episode are also featured in Back to the Future. And the fish in the fish tank is a koi, which is an Asian Oriental varieties of a domesticated common carp, and they're kept for decorative purposes in outdoor ponds and water gardens. I love koi fish. So we have this interesting flashback of Tyrell begging Elliot to be let on the plan, and then present day, there's Elliot going to a discreet location across a plan where he has like no idea what's happening. It's across the street where E-Corp is revealed to be gathering all of its paper records, and stage 2 is the hack of that building using a firmware to create a hydrogen gas explosion that will basically level the structure and cripple the corporation. We find out that Scott is the owner of the phone and is gaslighting Joanna to make her suffer because his wife Sharon died while she was pregnant. They had fought, and Scott beats her up so bad, which is scary because she's a very, very beautiful one. And she believed that Sharon deserved to die. And then Scott, even though he beats her, does stop and then calls 911. And Joanna asked Derek to frame Scott for Sharon's murder as payback, which is pretty smart. And Cisco ends up dying in the Dark Army's attack, and Darlene refuses Dominique's questions because she is being interrogated by the FBI. She pleads the Fifth, the Patriot Act, but Dominique knows that she stole the gun, leaked to the arcade. Meanwhile, 73 locations are going to fill with gas, which is wild. Dominique admits that, this is one of the hardest cases ever. They are smarter than them, and these are linked to some of the biggest events in history. But she reveals that Leslie Romano's death was a random accident, and the FBI has been tracking F Society for months under Project Bernstein, including Elliot, but they still think that Tyrell is the mastermind, not him. Elliot doesn't want to kill innocent people, so he thinks that Tyrell is not there. So Dominique, meanwhile, has admitted on this stray bullet on Romero. People are on the board. Everybody thinks they've figured it all out. I can't imagine what the writer's room is with this. But Elliot ends up deleting it all, and he believes that he's not there, and he ends up getting shot because he undoes it, and then Tyrell shoots him with Darlene's stolen gun, which causes Mr. Robot basically to glitch out. Tyrell was basically like, yeah, you told me to stop anyone that gets away in the plan, which is wild. And Tyrell is like deeply in love with Elliot. Angela ends up getting a call from Tyrell through the Dark Army because a massive brownout is going to occur. And then we see in a post-credit scene that Shema reveals to Sunil that she's found a way to undo the hack. And Sunil expresses the desire to move on from the incident. They're both approached by Leon, who's probably going to kill him, but he asked for the time. When Dominique is interrogating Darlene, their supervisor tells Darlene that there are no blue skies for her. Her type of character isn't welcome here. And that is a nod to USA's previous slogan and programming, which one of them is Burn Notice. But yeah, that is season 2 of Mr. Robot. It took me a minute to like this season. I think once the lie is revealed, it really picks up more. The last 3 episodes are so good, and it kind of takes a minute to find itself from there on. So pretty interesting. But what did y'all think? Let me know what you're thinking. I am excited to hear your thoughts, and as always, give us a subscribe. That is always so helpful. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, let me know what you think about in the comments. Bye.